Good evening, all the viewers, respected doctors. I welcome all of you for today's webinar. You doctors has proved that show must go on. During this pandemic also, this continuous medical education is going on, and tremendous support from you all. Today's our guest speaker is none other than Dr. Indranil De. He is well known amongst us. Thank you very much, sir. You have accepted our invitation for today's webinar. As all of us know about that, this month we are celebrating the centenary celebration for insulin, and this is because of that only the topic also has been selected like that only, why basal insulin supports oral anti-diabetic therapy. Though Dr. Indranil De is well known amongst us, but still I'll give a short introduction about sir. Sir is a consultant diabetologist and physician. Sir is an academician. He is very much interested for this kind of program, and he is doing pan-India basis the webinar across. He has done a PG diploma in diabetes and renal management from RCP, that is Royal College of Physicians, UK. Sir also has done diploma in diabetes and comorbidities also in double degree, and that is also sir has done from Royal College of Physicians, United Kingdom. Sir also done PG diploma in advanced cardiology and ECG from again RCP, that is Royal College of Physicians, UK. With this, I'll directly hand over the session to sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Devajyotida and the whole team of Lupin for supporting this webinar. In this situation of pandemic, we are meeting again and again to refresh ourselves, to refresh the knowledges, to refresh the subjects, so that we can utilize it for the best, to the best, for the productivity and treatment of the people. Thank you. Let's directly switch over to the slides. So our today's topic will be why basal insulin supports oral anti-diabetes therapy. It's a very important topic. There is a beautiful horizontal bar diagram representing countries with the highest number of diabetics worldwide in 2019 in terms of millions. We find China to be in the first line, constituting about 106.4 million, followed by India, 77 millions, followed by US, then Pakistan, Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, Germany, Egypt, and last is Bangladesh. The impact of non-severe hypoglycemic events on work productivity and diabetes management. That is a frequency of non-severe hypoglycemic events. We divide the table below into three parts. The first panel constituting the frequency. The second panel states about the percentage of patients with hypoglycemia in type 1, and the last panel with percentage of patients regarding type 2 diabetes mellitus. Number one is daily to once a week frequency. In type 1 cases, it is 64.5%, whereas in type 2, it is 24.9%. Once a month to several times a month, it is 23.5% for type 1, while it is 34.9% for type 2. Then only a few times a year or very rarely, it is 12% for type 1, while it is 40.2% for type 2. Now, what are the objective of this study? Hypoglycemia is a common complication of treatment with certain diabetes drugs. Non-severe hypoglycemic events, that is NSHES, occurs more frequently than severe events and accounts for the majority of total events. The objective of this multi-country study was to identify how NSHES in a working population affect productivity, costs, and self-management behaviors. What is the method of the study? A 20-minute survey assessing the impact of NSHES was administered via the internet to individuals more than or equal to 18 years of age with self-reported diabetes in the United States, UK, Germany, and France. The analysis sample consisted of all respondents who reported an NSHE in the past month. Topics included reason for, duration of, and impact of NSHES on productivity and diabetes self-management. What is the result of this brief study? A total of 1,404 respondents were included in this analysis. Lost productivity was estimated to range from $15.26 to $93.47 per NSHE, representing about 8.3 to 15.9 hours of lost work time per month. Among individuals reporting an NSHE at work, constituting N number of patients of 972, 18.3% missed work for an average of 9.9 hours. Among respondents experiencing an NSHE outside working hours, including nocturnal, 22.7% arrived late for the work or missed a full day. Productivity loss was highest for NSHES occurring during sleep, with an average of 14.7 working hours lost. In the week following the NSHE, respondents required an average of 5.6 extra blood glucose test strips. Among respondents using insulin, 25% decreased their insulin dose following the NSHE. So the conclusion of the study: NSHEs are associated with substantial economic consequences for employers and patients. Greater attention to treatment that reduce NSHEs could have a major positive impact on the lost work productivity and overall diabetes management. Now, addition of basal insulin to oral therapy, treat to target trial. The treat to target trial, it's a randomized addition of glargine or human NPH insulin to oral therapy of type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. Objective of the study is to compare the abilities and associated hypoglycemia risks of insulin glargine and human NPH insulin added to oral therapy of type 2 diabetes to achieve 7% A1C. Now, what is the research design and methods? In a randomized, open-label, parallel, 24-week multi-center trial, 756 overweight men and women with inadequate glycemic control, that is A1C of more than 7.5%, on one or two oral agents, continued pre-study oral agents and received bedtime glargine or NPH once daily. Titrated using a simple algorithm seeking a target fasting plasma glucose of less than or equal to 100 milligram per deciliter or 5.5 millimole per liter. Outcome measures were fasting plasma glucose, glycated hemoglobin, hypoglycemia, and the percentage of patients reaching or achieving A1C of less than or equal to 7% without documented nocturnal hypoglycemia. Let's go to the result of the study. Mean fasting plasma glucose at endpoint was similar with glargine and NPH, that is 117 versus 120 milligram per deciliter or 6.5 versus 6.7 millimole per liter, as was A1C, that is 6.96 versus 6.97%. A majority of patients, constituting about 60%, attained HbA1c goal of less than or equal to 7% with each insulin type. However, nearly 25% more patients attained these without documented nocturnal hypoglycemia, that is less than or equal to 72 milligram per deciliter or 4 millimole per liter with glargine. That is 33.2 versus 26.7% with a p-value of less than 0.05. Moreover, rates of other categories of symptomatic hypoglycemia were 21 to 48% lower with glargine. So let's do a conclusion of this study. Systematically titrating bedtime basal insulin added to oral therapy can safely achieve 7% A1C in a majority of overweight patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus, with A1C between 7.5 to 10% on oral agents alone. In doing this, glargine causes significantly less hypoglycemia than NPH, thus reducing a leading barrier to initiate insulin. The simple regimen may facilitate earlier and effective insulin use in a routine medical practice, improving achievement of recommended standards of diabetes care. Insulin in diabetes management. Insulin is the mainstay of therapy for individuals with type 1 diabetes mellitus. A broad range of pharmacological options are available for type 2 diabetes mellitus. Frequent monitoring of A1C is recommended every 3 months. Due to progressive beta cell dysfunction, insulin is often required. Let's move on to the next slide, which talks about beta cell exhaustion. Beta cell exhaustion develops along a continuum of hyperglycemia. Clinical inertia, non-compliance, and adverse effects often result in prolonged glycemic burden for individuals with type 2 diabetes mellitus receiving oral antidiabetic drugs. Early insulin initiation can help to overcome the glucotoxic effect of hyperglycemia, facilitate beta cell rest, preserve beta cell mass and function, while also improving insulin sensitivity. Earlier initiation of insulin therapy before further loss of beta cell function and microvascular complications may be more effective in providing long-term efficacy against the complications of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now see in this curve, the red line falls over a period of time indicating beta cell exhaustion. Beta cell failure is inevitable. All orals use endogenous insulin, which is already in shortfall. So are we starting insulin too late? The ideal goal is A1C of less than 7 early for legacy effect. Let's skip and come to this slide. Conservative management of type 2 diabetes mellitus, delaying therapy results in increased A1C as depicted by this curve, which is rising up over a period of time. Objective of the study is in type 2 diabetes, therapies to maintain blood glucose control usually fail after several years. We estimated the glycemic burden that accumulates from treatment failure and describe the time course and predictors of failure. What is the research design and method? A prospective population-based study using retrospective observational data. We identified all 7,208 complete courses of treatment with non-drug therapy, sulfonylurea monotherapy, metformin monotherapy, and a combination oral anti-hyperglycemic therapy between 1994 and 2002, inclusive among members of the Kaiser Permanente Northwest region. We calculated mean cumulative glycemic burden defined as A1C months more than 8 or 7% for each treatment. We then measured the likelihood that the next A1C would exceed 8 and 7% after A1C exceeded each of 10 hypothetical treatment thresholds. Finally, we estimated multivariate logistic regression models to predict when A1C would continue to deteriorate. Let's come to the result of this study. In this well-controlled population, the average patient accumulated nearly 5 A1C years of excess glycemic burden of more than 8% from diagnosis until starting insulin, and about 10 A1C years of burden of more than 7%. Whenever patient crossed the American Diabetes Association recommended treatment threshold of 8%, the next HbA1c result was likely to be less than 8 or more than 8%. Multivariate prediction models had higher statistically significant coefficients, but predicted less than 10% of the variation in future A1C results. Conclusion of the study. Clinicians should change glucose-lowering treatment in type 2 diabetes much sooner or use treatments that are less likely to fail. An action point at 7% or lower is more likely to prevent additional deterioration than the traditional action point of 8%. Let's move on to the next slide. Basal insulin is the first-line initiation approach in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Here is a caption from the Lancet. With entry of glargine, the basal-only therapy in combination with oral antidiabetic drugs is established as a first-line approach in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Larger number of studies conducted in insulin-naive type 2 diabetes mellitus recognized by international scientific community. What are the three body states? ADA 2018, AAC 2018, and International Diabetes Federation 2017. The American Diabetes Association states that basal insulin is the most convenient insulin to initiate therapy. AACE states therapy with long-acting basal insulin should be the initial choice in most cases. And International Diabetes Federation states that basal insulin should be preferred and it can be temporary. International Diabetes Federation 2017 Primary Care Guidelines. Many guidelines consider basal insulin as the best option when A1C target has not been achieved or lost with 2 oral glucose-lowering drugs. Avoiding injection should not be a reason to delay insulin. We should mind that. Now let's come to the concept of basal-supported oral therapy, that is BOT. Further, I will pronounce it as BOT only, instead of pronouncing the whole sentence like concept of basal-supported oral therapy. Addition of a third agent. A drug used as a third-line agent is likely to have less efficacy. With A1C of more than 8% and a long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus, reaching target A1C with a third oral antidiabetic drug is unlikely. Patients showing improved glycemic profile after addition of GLP-1 mimetics as a third agent will eventually require insulin. A drug used as a third-line agent is likely to have less efficacy than using the same medication as first or second-line therapy. It is unlikely for a patient taking 2 oral anti-hyperglycemic agent with an A1C of more than 8% and a long-standing type 2 diabetes mellitus to reach the target A1C with a third oral anti-hyperglycemic agent. Even the patient who show improved glycemic profile after addition of GLP-1 mimetic as a third agent will eventually require insulin. A single dose of basal insulin should be added to the regimen and adjusted at regular and short intervals to achieve the glucose target in these cases while avoiding hypoglycemia. Now this slide says, recognizing inadequacy of oral therapy, a diagnosis there is more than 50% loss of beta cell function, yearly 4 to 7% reduction in beta cell function, 2 oral antidiabetic drugs used maximally, increase hyperglycemic symptoms, weight loss, A1C constantly above 7%, duration of diabetes more than 5 years, and there is significant insulinopenia. Early BOT, that is early basal supported oral therapy, a forward strategy for preventing or prevention of diabetes progression and diabetes related complications. We see in this car, initially metformin plus sulfonylurea or voglibose or incretins are added. The curve came down, then it again went up. After addition of basal insulin to oral antidiabetic drugs plus minus GLP-1 mimetics and SGLT2 inhibitors, the curve achieved a constant plateau level at 5 years and maintained for more than 10 years. Benefits of early BOT. It modifies the course of the disease. It is capable of restoring residual beta cell function in the short term, providing the basis for a better response to the different maintenance therapies. Early basal insulin add-on lowers risk of hypoglycemia and weight gain and was cardiovascular safe in the high severics. This is the origin study. Then early insulin attenuated the risk of microvascular outcomes in participants with a baseline A1C level of more than 6%. It is the origin sub-analysis. What is the abstract? Dysglycemia results from a deficit in first phase insulin secretion, compounded by increased insulin insensitivity, exposing beta cells to chronic hyperglycemia and excessive glycemic variability. Initiation of intensive insulin therapy at diagnosis of type 2 diabetes mellitus to achieve normoglycemia has been shown to reverse glucotoxicity, resulting in recovery of residual beta cell function. The United Kingdom prospective diabetes study, that is ECOPEDIUS, 10-year post-trial follow-up reported reduction in cardiovascular outcomes and all-cause mortality in persons with type 2 diabetes mellitus who initially received intensive glucose control compared with standard therapy. In the cardiovascular outcome trial, outcome reduction with an initial glargine intervention, that is origin, a neutral effect on cardiovascular disease was observed in the population comprising pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Worsening of glycemic control was prevented over the 6.7-year treatment period with few serious hypoglycemia episodes and only moderate weight gain with a lesser need for dual or triple oral treatment versus standard care. Several other studies have also highlighted the benefits of early insulin initiation as first-line or add-on therapy to metformin. The decision to introduce basal insulin to metformin must, however, be individualized based on a risk-benefit analysis. The landmark origin trial provides many lessons related to the concept and application of early insulin therapy for the prevention and safe, effective induction and maintenance of glycemic control in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Yeah, panel from the Lupin, am I audible?
You are very much audible, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I should continue. I'm actually confused that am I audible or not. So let's proceed to the next slide. It is an insight study, a very beautiful study. The basal insulin led to greater and safe A1C lowering than oral anti-diabetic drug optimization. We see in this bar diagram The addition of GLA to OAD caused a reduction of A1C to minus 1.55, while optimization of OAD caused only minus 1.2% reduction. Basal insulin led to twice the number of patients reaching goal, similar hypoglycemic event rate compared to OAD intensification, and there is greater treatment satisfaction. So let's elaborate it. A randomized trial of adding insulin glargine versus avoidance of insulin in people with type 2 diabetes on either no oral glucose lowering agents or submaximal dose of metformin and or sulfonylureas. This is a Canadian INSIGHT study that is implementing new strategies with insulin glargine for hyperglycemia treatment. Aim of the study is to see that insulin is generally withheld until people with type 2 diabetes are unresponsive to other therapies. However, its potential advantages suggest that it could be added earlier to achieve glycemic goals. This possibility was tested in a clinical trial. What is the method? Consenting adults aged in between 18 to 80 years with type 2 diabetes mellitus for at least 6 months with an HbA1c range of 7.5 to 11% and on 0, 1 or 2 oral agents were randomized to one of two therapeutic approaches for 24 weeks. Evening insulin glargine plus self-titration by 1 unit per day if the fasting plasma glucose was more than 5.5 millimole per liter, or conventional therapy with physician adjustment of oral glucose lowering agents if capillary fasting plasma glucose levels were more than 5.5 millimole per liter. The primary outcome was the first achievement of 2 consecutive A1C levels of less than or equal to 6.5%. What is the result of the study? 206 participants were allocated to glargine and 199 to oral agents. Compared with control subjects, participants receiving glargine were 1.6 times more likely to achieve 2 consecutive A1C levels of less than or equal to 6.5% with a 95% confidence interval ranging in between 1 to 2.83 and a p-value of 0.049. To reduce their A1C by 1.55 versus 1.25% with a p-value of 0.005. Achieving adjusted means of 7 versus 7.2 with a p-value of 0.0007. Had lower fasting plasma glucose, non-high density lipoprotein cholesterol, and triglycerides. Had greater increase in treatment satisfaction and had a 1.9 kilogram greater increase in weight. No differences in hypoglycemia were noted. So the conclusion of the study is that adding insulin glargine is more likely to achieve a lower A1C level than conventional therapy with oral agents. Basal supported oral therapy study with basal plus sulfonylureas. These are few cards. So when glycemic controls become difficult with sulfonylurea agents, insulin therapy should be introduced as soon as possible. In other words, while sulfonylurea doses are still lower or low. The introduction of BOT allows reduction of sulfonylurea dose in type 2 diabetes patients failing to achieve control with oral anti-diabetic drug alone. BOT with insulin glargine is a useful strategy in clinical practice without causing serious hypoglycemia. The objective of the study is to determine the clinical usefulness of BOT using insulin glargine in Japanese patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus. Methods applied where we compared A1C levels, body weight, and insulin dose before the introduction of BOT. And in the final month of the observation period in 122 patients with type 2 diabetes who received BOT with insulin glargine, between October 2007 and July 2009, to exclude the possible effects of seasonal changes in glycemic control. 57 of the 122 patients were followed up for 1 year and examined for changes in A1C levels, body weight, and insulin dosage. Let's go to the result of the study. Examination of all cases, that is 122 patients or participants, showed a significant decrease in A1C. Before BOT, it was 8.7 plus minus 1.8, and after BOT, that is after introduction of BOT, it is 7.1 plus minus 1.1%. But no significant change in body weight was there. That is before introduction of BOT, it was 63.1 plus minus 16.1. And after introduction of BOT, it was 63.8 plus minus 17 kgs. The mean observation period was 10.5 plus minus 6.4 months. Insulin doses were significantly increased during the study. A1C level improved significantly in patients on non-insulin secreting drugs like biguanide, a glucosidase inhibitor, a thiazolidine derivative, than those on insulin secreting drugs like sulfonylurea agents and glinides. So the conclusion of the study is that BOT with insulin glargine is a useful strategy that can achieve good glycemic control in clinical practice without causing serious hypoglycemia. The introduction of BOT before exhaustion of pancreatic beta cells may increase its effectiveness. So let's refresh BOT with sulfonylureas, useful strategy in clinical practice that can achieve good glycemic control without causing serious hypoglycemia. Allows reduction of sulfonylurea dose in patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus who have failed to achieve good glycemic control with oral hypoglycemic agents alone. The introduction of therapy before exhaustion of pancreatic beta cells may increase its effectiveness when glycemic control becomes difficult with sulfonylurea agents. Insulin therapy should be introduced as soon as possible, in other words, while sulfonylurea doses are still low. Now let's move on to the next topic, that is benefit of early BOT DPP-4 inhibitors with basal insulin. A meta-analysis to assess the efficacy and safety of DPP-4 inhibitors plus insulin in adults type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. These are 7 studies involving 3,384 participants were included and results were revealed. There is significant reduction in A1C, that is a minus 0.52% with a 95% confidence interval ranging in between minus 0.59 to minus 0.44. Decrease in 2-hour ppbg, that is minus 1.81 millimole per liter. These results support that the combination therapy could serve as a potential therapeutic strategy, offers an alternative option for patients inadequately controlled on other oral antidiabetic agents. Now the next topic is benefit of early BOT SGLT2 inhibitors with basal insulin. Having an insulin-dependent MOA, SGLT2 inhibitors may offer benefits to patients on insulin. In a 78-week study by Rosenstock et al., empagliflozin as an add-on to basal insulin demonstrated mean A1C reduction of minus 0.5%, FPG difference of 10 milligram per deciliter, body weight reduction of about 2 kilograms, no increased risk of hypoglycemia, mean insulin dose reduction of 1 to 2 units per day. So inference is SGLT2 inhibitors in combination with basal insulin may be a viable treatment alternative and potentially results in preventing and or delaying progression to a more complex insulin regimen involving multiple daily injections. So now let's elaborate the issue. What is the abstract of this study? Type 2 diabetes mellitus management is complex, with few patients successfully achieving recommended glycemic targets with monotherapy. most progressing to combination therapy and many eventually requiring insulin. Sodium glucose cotransporter 2 inhibitor, that is SGLT2 inhibitors, are an emerging class of antidiabetic agents with an insulin-independent mechanism of action, making them suitable for use in combination with any other class of antidiabetic agents, including insulin. This review evaluates a 78-week randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial investigating the impact of empagliflozin, an SGLT2 inhibitor, as add-on to basal insulin in patients with inadequate glycemic control on basal insulin with or without metformin and or a sulfonylurea. Empagliflozin added onto basal insulin resulted in significant and sustained reduction in glycated hemoglobin levels compared with placebo. Empagliflozin had previously been shown to induce weight loss and was associated with sustained weight loss in this study. This combination therapy was well tolerated with similar levels of hypoglycemia with similar levels of hypoglycemic adverse events in the empagliflozin and placebo groups over the 78-week treatment period. Urinary tract infection and genital infections, side effects associated with SGLT2 inhibitors were reported more commonly in the EMPA group. However, such events led to treatment discontinuation in very few patients. This is important. These findings suggest that with their complementary mechanism of action, EMPA added onto basal insulin may be a useful treatment option in patients on basal insulin who need additional glycemic control without weight gain. Now let's move on to the next slide. It says the risk benefit was found best with basal versus prandial or premix as add-on to metformin plus sulfonylurea. What is the background of this study? Evidence supporting the addition of specific insulin regimens to oral therapy in patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus is limited. Methods applied is that in this 3-year open-label multicenter trial, we evaluated 708 patients who had suboptimal glycated hemoglobin levels while taking metformin and sulfonylurea therapy. Patients were randomly assigned to receive biphasic insulin aspart twice daily, prandial insulin aspart 3 times daily, or basal insulin detamir once daily and twice if required. Sulfonylurea therapy was replaced by a second type of insulin if hyperglycemia became unacceptable during the first year of the study, or subsequently if glycated hemoglobin levels were more than 6.5%. Outcome measures were glycated hemoglobin levels, the proportion of patients with a glycated hemoglobin level of 6.5% or less, the rate of hypoglycemia, and weight gain. What is the result of this study? In this 3-year, median glycated hemoglobin levels were similar for patients receiving biphasic, that is 7.1%. For prandial, it is 6.8%, and for basal, it is 6.9% insulin-based regimen. However, fewer patients had a level of 6.5% or less in the biphasic group, that is 31.9%, than in the prandial group, 44.7%, or in the basal group, 43.2%, with 67.7%, 73.6%, and 81.6% respectively. Taking a second type of insulin, median rates of hypoglycemia per patient per year were lowest in the basal group, that is 1.7, higher in the biphasic group, that is 3, and highest in the prandial group, that is 5.7. For the overall comparison, okay, the mean weight gain was higher in the prandial group than either the biphasic group or the basal group. Other adverse event rates were similar in the 3 groups. So the conclusion is that patients who added a basal or prandial insulin-based regimen to oral therapy had better glycated hemoglobin control than patients who added a biphasic insulin-based regimen. Fewer hypoglycemic episodes and less weight gain occurred in patients adding basal insulin. Now let's move on to the next topic. Effectiveness of BOT using insulin glargine in patients with poorly controlled type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. Methodology applied is that objective is to determine the clinical usefulness of BOT using insulin glargine in Japanese patients with type 2 diabetes. We have also discussed it earlier. And again, let's refresh it. Methods applied were A1C levels, body weight, and insulin doses were compared before the introduction of BOT and the final month of observation period in 122 patients with type 2 diabetes who received BOT with insulin glargine. To exclude the possible effects of seasonal changes in glycemic control, 57 of the 122 patients were followed up for 1 year and examined for changes in A1C levels, body weight, and insulin dose. The background of the study is that the first basal insulin evaluation, that is FINE-Asia study, is a multinational prospective observational study of insulin-naive type 2 diabetes mellitus patients in Asia, uncontrolled A1C of more than or equal to 8% on oral hypoglycemic agents, designed to evaluate the impact of basal insulin initiation. The methods were basal insulin was initiated with or without concomitant oral therapy, and doses were adjusted individually. All treatment choices, including the decision to initiate insulin, were at the physician's discretion to reflect real-life practice. Let's go to the results. With an N number of patients of 2,679 from 11 Asian countries were enrolled. Mean plus minus SD duration of diabetes is 9.3 plus minus 6.5 years. Weight 68.1 plus minus 12.7 kilograms. A1C 9.8 plus minus 1.6%. After 6 months of basal insulin, that is NPH insulin, insulin glargine, or insulin detamir, A1C decreased to 7.7 plus minus 1.4%. 33.7% patients reached A1C goals of less than 7%. FVG decreased from 11.7 plus minus 3.6 to 7.2 plus minus 2.5 millimole per liter. Sorry. And 36.8% of patients reached FVG less than 6.1 millimole per liter. The mean daily insulin dose prescribed increased marginally from 0.18 to 0.23 units per kg per day at baseline to 0.22 to 0.24 units per kg per day at month 6. Mean changes in body weight and reported rates of hypoglycemia were low over the duration of the study. What is the conclusion? Initiation of insulin therapy is still being delayed by approximately 9 years, resulting in many Asian patients developing severe hyperglycemia. Initiating insulin treatment with basal insulin was effective and safe in Asian type 2 diabetes mellitus patients in a real-world setting. But insulin needs may differ from those in Western countries. So the result analysis is that regarding observation period, A1C and FBG decreased significantly after the introduction of BOT. No significant changes were noted in body weight. In the follow-up group, A1C decreased significantly after the introduction of BOT. The dose of insulin increased significantly after BOT. No significant changes were observed in the body weight. Now let's move on to a next topic, that is status of basal-supported oral therapy in Chinese type 2 diabetes mellitus patients with inadequate glycemic control on oral anti-diabetic drugs. Background of the study is that timely initiation and treatment titration of basal insulin added onto oral anti-diabetic drugs contribute to better glycemic control. However, implementation of basal-supported oral therapy in China is not yet clear. This nationwide prospective 12-week observational study was designed to explore the current status of basal-supported oral therapy in patients with type 2 diabetes in China. What is the method applied? Let's go to the methods. Type 2 diabetic patients with inadequate glycemic control on oral anti-diabetic drugs who were to start basal-supported oral therapy with insulin glargine at outpatient clinics were enrolled from 134 hospitals in China. Both the decision to initiate basal insulin and insulin dose adjustment were at the physician's discretion. Fasting plasma glucose and glycated hemoglobin were measured, and the starting dose of insulin were recorded at baseline. Self-monitored fasting plasma glucose and the adjusted dose of insulin were collected during the study. Now let's come to the results. A total of 11,192 out of 13,259 enrolled patients finished the 12-week study. Fasting plasma glucose and glycated hemoglobin at baseline at basal-supported oral therapy initiation were 11.2 millimole per liter and 9.4% respectively, with insulin glargine started at 0.190 IU per kg per day. Insulin dose was increased 1.8 IU in average within 12 weeks. 59% of the patients achieved fasting plasma glucose of less than or equal to 7 millimole per liter. More patients achieved the glucose target in the group with lower baseline FBG levels. Notable geographical differences of physicians' treatment habits in the current management of basal-supported oral therapy were also observed. So what is the conclusion? A great gap between everyday clinical practice and guidelines exists in China, reflected by the delayed initiation, slow dose titration, and geographical differences of basal-supported oral therapy management. A concrete guideline of basal-supported oral therapy management is needed in the clinical application. Methodology. Objective: to explore the current status of basal-supported oral therapy in patients with type 2 diabetes in China. Type 2 diabetes patient with inadequate glycemic control on anti-diabetic drugs who were to start basal-supported oral therapy with insulin glargine at outpatient clinics were enrolled from 134 hospitals in China, as we've already stated. FBG and A1C and the starting dose of insulin were recorded at baseline. Self-monitoring, fasting plasma glucose, and the adjusting dose of insulin were collected during the study. Let's come to the result analysis of the same thing. The FBG level decreased markedly in the first 4 weeks. Thereafter, the FBG levels decreased very slowly till the end of the study. Similarly, insulin dose was increased more obviously within the first 4 weeks. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Early lessons from Glargine in the treat to target trials. Systematic titration of basal insulins can restore A1C to less than or equal to 7% in a majority of overweight patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus with A1C between 7.5 and 10% on oral agents alone. Aim of the study is to evaluate the benefit of initiating insulin at an earlier versus later treatment stage and regimens with or without sulfonylureas. What are the methods applied? Pooled analysis of 11 prospective randomized controlled trial, including 2,171 adults with uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, initiating insulin Glargine following a specific titration algorithm. Clinical outcomes were glycated hemoglobin reduction, percent achieving A1C of less than or equal to 7%, weight gain, and hypoglycemic events. Statistical analysis compared outcomes 24 weeks after basal insulin initiation in patients previously uncontrolled on 0 or 1 oral antidiabetic drugs versus 2 oral antidiabetic drugs, and in patients taking metformin or sulfonylurea alone or in combination. At baseline, a meta-analysis was also conducted. What is the result of the study? For the pooled analysis, patients on 0 or 1 oral antidiabetic drug and those on metformin monotherapy at baseline had the largest 24-week reduction in A1C following the addition of insulin Glargine. Of patients failing metformin or sulfonylurea monotherapy and metformin plus sulfonylurea in combination, 68.1, 50.4, and 56.4% achieved A1C of less than or equal to 7% respectively, with a p-value of 0.0006. Weight gain was lowest when basal insulin was added to metformin. Patients on 1 or 0 oral antidiabetic drugs at baseline had significantly less symptomatic hypoglycemia when basal insulin was added than those on 2 oral antidiabetic drugs. Despite higher insulin doses, those taking metformin alone had less hypoglycemia than those taking sulfonylurea or metformin plus sulfonylurea. Result was confirmed in the meta-analysis. So the conclusion is that adding insulin Glargine to metformin monotherapy early in the treatment may provide efficacy or safety benefits over regimens including sulfonylurea. These may reflect earlier in the disease and supports the inclusion of insulin as a second step in the American Diabetes Association or European Association for the Study of Diabetes Treatment algorithm. Let's move on to the next slide. This is the type of insulin can influence persistence with therapy. A database study of persistence with basal or premix or as first insulin after becoming uncontrolled on oral glucose lowering therapy. We see in the left side a beautiful bar diagram. The persistence is more with basal insulin indicated by the blue bar, where it is less in premix insulin. In the right side, the blue curve indicates more persistence with basal insulin Glargine than in the premix. So what is persistence? Persistence is defined as remaining on treatment, that is prescription refilled within the expected time during the follow-up period without discontinuation or switching after initiation. Glargine effectively brings down fasting plasma glucose and postprandial glucose with low risk of hypoglycemia and weight gain versus premix is an initiate study. We see the symptomatic hypoglycemia in the premix group is 43, whereas in the glargine group it is 16 with a p-value of less than 0.05. Regarding weight change, it is 5.4 for premix, whereas it is 3.5 for glargine with a p-value of less than 0.01. Here are again 3 bar diagrams. That is hypoglycemia, weight gain, and daily dose, all lower with insulin glargine versus premix. Glargine is indicated by the blue bar, and the premixed insulin is represented by the yellow bar. Now let's move on to efficacy and safety of efficacy and safety of once daily insulin degludec aspart compared with once daily glargine in participants with type 2 diabetes mellitus. Let's explain this slide. Aim is to investigate in a 26-week open-label randomized treat-to-target trial the efficacy and safety of insulin degludec insulin aspart, that is IDEC-ASP, once daily versus insulin glargine, represented by iGlar, once daily, in adults with type 2 diabetes inadequately controlled on basal insulin. Let's talk about the methods applied. Participants were randomized 1:1 to IDEC-ASP once daily or iGlar once daily in combination with existing oral antidiabetic drugs. IDEC-ASP once daily was administered with the main evening meal or the largest meal of the day, agreed at baseline. Dosing time was maintained throughout the trial. Participants titrated their insulin dose weekly to a mean pre-breakfast self-measured plasma glucose target of 3.9 to 4.9 millimole per liter, that is 70 to 89 milligram per deciliter. What is the result of the study? IDEC-ASP once daily was non-inferior to iGlar once daily in reducing A1C after 28 weeks. Mean estimated treatment difference, IDEC-ASP once daily or iGlar once daily is 0.03% with a 95% confidence interval ranging in between minus 0.20 to 0.14. The evening meal glucose increment was significantly lower with IDEC-ASP once daily versus iGlar once daily. Estimated treatment difference, IDEC-ASP once daily and iGlar once daily is 1.32 millimole per liter with a 95% confidence interval ranging in between minus 1.93 to minus 0.72 with a p-value of less than 0.05. The overall confirmed hypoglycemia rate was higher with IDEC-ASP once daily. Estimated rate ratio was 1.43 with a 95% confidence interval ranging in between 1.07 to 1.92 with a p-value of less than 0.05. The rate of nocturnal hypoglycemia did not significantly differ between the IDEC-ASP and iGlar groups. Estimated rate ratio 0.80 with a 95% confidence interval ranging in between 0.49 to 1.30, not significant. So the conclusion is that in participants with type 2 diabetes inadequately controlled on basal insulin, IDEC-ASP once daily improved glycemic control and was non-inferior to iGlar once daily. IDEC-ASP led to higher rates of overall hypoglycemia than iGlar, with no significant difference in rates of nocturnal hypoglycemia. Efficacy and safety of once daily IDEC-ASB compared with once daily glargine in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Let's explain these slides. Aim is to investigate in a 26-week open-label randomized treat-to-target trial the efficacy and safety of insulin degludec insulin aspart, that is IDEC-ASB once daily, versus insulin glargine. Once daily in adults with type 2 diabetes, inadequately controlled on basal insulin. I think we have already discussed till. Let's move on. Methods applied were participants were randomized 1:1 to IDEC, ASB, and Igler once daily in combination with existing oral anti-diabetic drug. IDEC ASB once daily was administered with the main evening meal or the largest meal of the day, as we have already discussed. Dosing time was maintained throughout the trial. Participants titrated their insulin dose weekly to a mean pre-breakfast, self-measured plasma glucose target. It was 3.9 to 4.9 millimole. Okay, we have discussed the slides. Let's go to the next slide. Efficacy and safety of once daily IDEC ASB compared with once daily glargine in oral anti-diabetic drug uncontrolled type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. What is the result? The IDEC ASB was found to be non-inferior to glargine in A1C reduction, numerically better FBG reduction with glargine, a greater mean total daily insulin dose with IDEC ASB versus Igler, both at week 26, that is 66 versus 59 units, and at week 52, it was 70 units versus 62 units. Origin study, long-term efficacy of glargine in type 2 diabetes mellitus on impaired fasting glucose and impaired glucose tolerance patients. Glargine demonstrated a neutral effect on cardiovascular outcome parameters. Earlier use of once daily glargine leads to targeted and sustainable glycemic control with a low risk of hypoglycemia. Real-world evidence on effectiveness, a 9-month open-label multi-center observational study with optional 32-month extension phase. Add-on Lentus to oral anti-diabetic drugs initiated in 12,216 insulin-naive type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. 1,915 included in 32-month extension. Insulin dose was adjusted at the physician's discretion. Scriber et al. Carried out an observational study to investigate the long-term efficacy and safety of adding insulin glargine to oral anti-diabetic drug treatment in patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus in everyday practice. This was a 9-month open-label observational study with optional 20 and 32-month extension phases in which add-on insulin glargine therapy was initiated in 12,216 patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus, inadequately controlled on OADs. This study found that addition of insulin glargine to oral anti-diabetic drug therapy led to reduction in mean A1C of minus 1.5% and FBG minus 69 milligram per deciliter, that is 3.8 millimole per liter levels after 3 months, which were maintained after 9 months. This A1C of minus 1.7%, FBG of minus 71 milligram per deciliter or 3.9 millimole per liter, and at 32 months, A1C was minus 1.6%, fasting blood glucose was minus 71.8 milligram per deciliter or minus 4 millimole per liter. A trend of decreasing BMI value was observed in the overall study population from a mean 29 plus minus 4 kilogram per meter square at baseline to 28.7 plus minus 4.5 kilogram per meter square after 3 months and 28.5 plus minus 4.8 kg per meter square after 9 months. The extension phase showed an overall decrease in patient BMI from 29 plus minus 4.7 to 28.6 plus minus 4.7 kg per meter square at 9 months. and 28.7 plus minus 4.7 kg per meter square at 20 months. In everyday practice, patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus who are inadequately controlled on OADs benefit from add-on basal insulin treatment with insulin glargine, as they demonstrated improved glycemic control without weight gain. So the study summary aimed to analyze the effect of long-term once daily insulin glargine plus OAD therapy on glycemic control. Study design, 9-month open label uncontrolled multi-center observational study with a 32-month extension period. Outcomes, primary is final HbA1c, secondary is FPG, daily insulin dose and BMI. Population, insulin naive, type 2 diabetes mellitus, inadequately controlled on oral antidiabetic drugs, 9-month study. Total number of patients included were 12,216 with a 32-month extension phase. The N number of participants were 1,915. Treatment received, patient received insulin glargine, 100 IU per ml in addition to the existing oral antidiabetic therapy. Real-world evidence on effectiveness in India. Fine Asia study, the first basal insulin evaluation, that is Fine Asia study. Countries with more than 9 years of diabetes prior to insulin initiation had the lowest reduction in A1C and proportion of patients achieving A1C and FPG targets, suggesting that earlier basal insulin initiation may afford better glycemic control in these patients. Fine Asia, insulin glargine has effective, that is minus 2.1% A1C control and less hypoglycemia versus Detemir or NPH in the Asian patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now let's elaborate this slide. Description, Fine Asia is a multinational prospective observational study in 11 Asian countries evaluating the efficacy and safety of initiating basal insulin in 2,921 insulin-naive Asian patients with uncontrolled type 2 diabetes mellitus with A1C of more than or equal to 8% on oral antidiabetic therapy. Patients were treated with insulin glargine, constituting 2,196 participants. NPH consisting of 637 participants, sorry, and Detemir with 75 participants, all with treatment determined by the physician. Among all patients, A1C was reduced from 9.8 plus minus 1.6 to 7.7 plus minus 1.4% at 6 months following the initiation of basal insulin, with 33.7% of patients achieving A1C of less than 7%. Similarly, FBG decreased from 11.7 to 7.2 millimole per liter at month 6, with 36.5% of patients reaching FBG of less than 6.1 millimole per liter, that is less than 110 milligram per deciliter. Insulin glargine provided better glycemic control. Change in A1C adjusted from baseline at month 6, that is minus 2.1%. Then did NPH, that is minus 1.9% with a p-value of less than 0.05, or Detemir, that is minus 0.8% with a p-value of less than 0.5. P-value of less than 0.001 for overall comparison. Insulin glargine and NPH patients exhibited some weight gain, that is plus 0.4 and plus 0.7 kg respectively, whereas patients using Detemir observed a decrease in weight, that is minus 0.4 4 kilograms with a p-value of 0.0276 for overall comparison. Although overall hypoglycemia rates were low, with 13.2 and 0.3% of patients experiencing mild or moderate and severe episodes respectively, insulin glargine was associated with significantly lower incidence of mild or moderate and severe hypoglycemia rate than NPH, both with a p-value of less than 0.05. More physicians and patients rated insulin glargine as good, very good, that is 76/80% versus NPH 57/67% and Detimir 40/48%. Initiation of insulin treatment with basal insulin was efficient and safe in Asian patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus, with significant differences found among basal insulins. So let's summarize the whole story. BOT concept, that is initiating basal insulin early along with newer or older oral therapies, has the advantage of low hypoglycemia and weight gain. Studies with glargine help establish basal-only therapy in combination with WADs, established as the first-line approach in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Starting with right dose and optimal titration can lead patient to reach goal with lower incidence of weight gain or hypoglycemia than human/analog premix insulin. Observational studies from Asia and the world support real-world effectiveness. Origin trial support long-term durability and safety. Thank you, audience, for the patient hearing. Over to the Lupin people.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful presentation. So, yes, there are a few questions also been placed. So, let us directly go to the question answer session.
Yeah, I will try to answer the questions. Please carry on. Let's see.
Yeah, first question has been raised by Dr. M.C. Sharma. What is the clinical evidence of early and aggressive initiation of insulin therapy?
Yeah, please repeat the question.
What is the clinical evidence of early and aggressive initiation of insulin therapy?
What is the clinical evidence of early and aggressive
initiation of insulin therapy?
Can you elaborate the question, please? I am not able to grasp the question properly.
You can read out also. It is in chat. You can directly go to the chat and you can directly access the question. I think it will be easier for you.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, as we have talked, there are some real-world studies and many studies which I have elaborated. These are clinically documented studies that early and aggressive initiation of insulin therapy with oral antidiabetic drugs cause lesser or late onset of microvascular complications, which are supposed to set in a diabetic patient over a period of time. So there are many clinical evidences. Last I talked about the Fine Asia study, then other Origin study and all, which documented that early and aggressive initiation of insulin therapy with other oral antidiabetic drugs is likely to cause lesser microvascular complications in a case of diabetes mellitus. There are many studies like Fine-Asia study and others, which you have already discussed. Yeah, there was
other questions are also there in chat box. You can directly.
Yeah, there are Manichandra Sharma. He wants to know how many % of patients require insulin eventually. Yeah, as we have already discussed in the slides, that in our country, especially in the Asian countries and India, we have a tendency to avoid insulin initially, and when the oral anti-diabetic drugs subsequently fail to control our diabetic state, then with advice or whatever you say, advice of the physicians, we start insulin. So actually the question is that how many % of patients eventually require insulin? I should say that most of the patients, that is about 50% to 60% of the patients eventually require insulin. And regarding this factor, I would like to say that only medications won't solve the issues, because there are other issues like lifestyle changes, like stress and all. We need to do exercise and everything. So a certain good amount of persons or patients require insulin eventually, because we have a tendency to avoid insulin due to the thing that it is an injection, so we should avoid it, as we have already discussed. Yeah, what data suggest on comparing insulin glargine versus insulin detamir? You have already discussed. Okay, Dr. P.K. Das questioned which insulin is most convenient to initiate. So there are many data which you have already discussed suggests that initiation of bedtime basal insulin is the best insulin to start with, either alone or in combination with other older or newer anti-diabetic drugs. Yeah. These are my very brief answers. Yes, over to Debojyoti Da.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation by you. Really, it was. I think is an interactive session. Doctor has also participated. So thank you very much once again to all the doctors participated for this webinar. At the same time, I also congratulate Dr. Indranil De for such a wonderful presentation. And I think this is the right forum also to convey our regards regarding this pandemic. Actually, during this pandemic, the way actually you all have helped the patient with limited resource and keep the hope alive day in, day out. Really, thank you very much on behalf of Synox Lupin, myself, Debojyoti, always grateful to you all. With this, with your permission, sir, shall we conclude the program?
Yeah, Debojyoti, we can conclude the program with a vote of thanks to all of you and the participants who have given a lot of time and had a patient hearing of the topic. Thank you, Debojyoti, and the Looping Synox team.
Thank you. At the same time, I also thank you, my colleagues, Deepak and Bhaskar and other team member for making this program so successful. And also technical team, without any hiccups or any disturbance. Thank you for helping us to conduct this program on time seamlessly. Thank you, Roshni.
Yeah.
With this, let us sign off, and thank you very much once again to all the doctors, and good night. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, now I'm ending the meeting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are signing off. Thank you. Thank you so much.